The sun rose on the third day, casting a long shadow across the fella's barn-dominium. The line of gopher mounds, which now looked like a tiny earthen mountain range, was an enduring testament to his folly. The fella, who'd probably been drunker than Cooter Brown on his own despair, came out of his place looking like he'd been tumped over and left to dry. He just stood there on his porch, staring at the mess, his shoulders slumped like a broken fence post. Bronkey, for his part, was already out and about, a silent brown and white sentinel with his faded red bandana. He wasn't doing much of anything, just standing and contemplating the peace of the morning. Pig, of course, was in his wallow, a puddle of contentment, a state of being that was happy as a pig in slop. He wasn't about to get all stirred up over a little bit of trouble. Pig was a fella who understood the concept of don't pay it no mind. Bronkey watched the fella. He'd tried to fight the gopher, and now he was getting his comeuppance. He had been fixing to win, and now he was fit to be tied. He had a look on his face like he felt smaller than he was. It was a teachable moment, if only the fella could learn it. The fella, after a good long spell of standing still, finally walked off the porch and down the steps. He walked past the line of gopher mounds, not even looking at 'em. He walked right out to the pasture and stood beside Bronkey. Bronkey just looked at him, his big, soft eyes a little quizzical. The fella just stood there, his hands in his pockets. And then he did a funny thing. He looked at Bronkey, and then at the gopher mounds, then back at Bronkey, and then he did what he should have done 2 days ago. He laughed. It was a quiet, tired laugh, like the sound of a dry leaf skittering across the ground. It wasn't a triumphant laugh, mind you, but a laugh of pure, unadulterated relief. He had finally gotten a handle on the situation. He had finally come to the realization that he was in a battle that had no winner. "Well, Bronkey," he said, his voice a low rumble, "I declare that little old gopher has got me beat. He's smarter'n me. I've been plumb foolish." Bronkey just stood there, silent and still. He wasn't one to gloat. He was a donkey after all. The fella knelt down and patted Bronkey on the side. "You've been trying to tell me, haven't you, boy? Don't argue with an idiot. That's what you were saying to me, I reckon." Bronkey just sighed a little, a sound that said, "It's all good, friend. The lesson's learned." The fella said, standing up and looking out at the pasture where Pig was doing his best impression of a rock. He bent down and gently patted Pig on the head. Pig, who had never moved, didn't even stir, but he did let out a contented little grunt that said, "It's all good, fella, it's all good." The fella stood up, took a deep breath, and looked out at the peaceful morning. The sun was getting higher in the sky, the birds were singing, and the world was going on, same as it ever was. He had a sudden realization. He'd been trying to change a gopher when he should have been changing himself. He had been so focused on the chaos that he had stopped learning and growing himself. He gave a little nod to himself, a silent, humble acknowledgement of his foolishness. He walked back to his barn-dominium, went inside, and a few minutes later he came back out. This time he wasn't carrying a shovel or a firecracker or a bucket of concrete. He was carrying a little bucket of seed and a watering can. He walked right up to the line of gopher mounds, and he began to scatter the seeds. He watered them gently, and then he stood up and just looked at the patch of ground, a little smile on his face. Bronkey, who had been watching the whole time, walked over to the fence and watched the fella from his spot. Pig, too, finally roused himself and ambled over to the fence to see what was going on. The fella was planting flowers, not vegetables, not nothing that a gopher would want. Just a whole mess of bright, beautiful flowers. He was turning a symbol of his defeat into a monument to his peace. He was taking a tore-up situation and making it prettier than a speckled pup. The fella looked at Bronkey Pig, a genuine, easy smile on his face. He had finally listened to the wisdom they had been showing him all along. He had learned that sometimes the best way to deal with a fool is to walk away, to let 'em be, and to plant a little bit of peace in their wake. He had finally, it seemed, learned to charge them boundaries. He looked at the two of them, the silent donkey and the contented pig, and just gave a nod. "Thank you, boys. Lord have mercy. Thank you." And with that, he went on about his business, a man who was, for the first time in a long time, feeling lighter and a whole lot more inspired. The war with the gopher was over, and the flowers was fixing to bloom.